Good evening and thank you for joining me on BizWeek once again. Your current affairs program specifically designed to keep you abreast with policy in terms of the business environment and of course the overall economic governance of the country. Now tonight is a very interesting night because we will be discussing something that has happened which is very important, a game changer when it comes to management of the new normal, be it in the health sector, economic governance, in the business industry. Yes, we are talking about administration, or should I say, arrival of the COVID-19 vaccine, which is AstraZeneca. Now, we know that Zambia has about 8 million adults, and the vaccines that have arrived so far are only 200,000, doses. So the question is, who will be prioritized? What sort of mechanism is in place to be able to ensure that there is transparency and also effective targeted administration of these vaccines? The name is Wenson Mavoro, and joining me tonight on the show to be able to discuss what this arrival of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine means for Zambia is Dr. Chabuka Kawesha, who is from the Zambia Private Sector Alliance, and he is the chairperson. And of course, another stakeholder of utmost interest is Mr. Jacob Makambwe, who is Secretary General from the Southern Africa Cross-Border Traders Association. And we will be discussing what arrival of this vaccine in Zambia means when it comes to cross-border trade and of course when it comes to the private sector at large. As you may be aware, in developed countries such as the United States of America, as rollout of the vaccine progresses, we've seen the economy begin to open up. We've seen restrictions being eased to allow for small businesses within the private sector to start operating, and of course to ensure that those that were affected in terms of employment, salaries and other amenities that those businesses were providing in respective communities is restored. So we want to interrogate this evening, will the story be the same for Zambia as this vaccine has come? Good evening, Dr. Kawesha.
Good evening. How are you, Watson?
Very much okay. Good evening, Mr. Makambwe. All right, so Doc, I'll start with
Good
you.
evening.
Okay, Doc, I'll start with you. You're welcome, Mr. Makambwe. Doc, I'll start with you. We know that this has been quite, something that the majority of the people have been calling for, for Zambia to be able to procure the vaccine and ensure that we're up to speed with what is happening on the global trend. Now, how is the private sector receiving this development, Dr. Kawesha?
Thank you so much, Watson. I think initially we would like to pay our gratitude and appreciations to the officials within the Ministry of Health, the frontline staff at various levels within the Ministry of Health that have really been at greater or higher risk since the pandemic was first reported in our country and the world all over. It brings some form of relief, we must admit, to see the vaccines finally arrive in the country, and to see that government through the Ministry of Health and the efforts of many other players, of course, cabinet and the private sector at large, are in the background collaborating and discussing on how best each one of us can play a significant role. So we can only appreciate the efforts that everyone has put into this particular initiative of getting the vaccines into the country. And but as much as the vaccines have come and will begin to increase in number in terms of volume quantities that the country will be receiving, let us not fall back on the primary health guidelines that we've been advised to follow.
Indeed, emphasis is on the majority of Zambians not relaxing in terms of adhering to the COVID-19 guidelines in light of the vaccine that Zambia has just arrived, secured. Mr. Makambwe, I know that cross-border traders were affected badly by the COVID-19 pandemic because different countries are implementing different COVID-19 measures, and the extent to which these countries are enforcing, these regulations differs, making it very difficult for cross-border traders to be able to conduct their businesses within the region. So, are cross-border traders happy that we now have AstraZeneca in the country?
Yeah, thank you very much for this particular opportunity. I must also say that we actually acknowledge this particular receipt of vaccines with appreciation, and the efforts that the Ministry of Health and the government at large has actually put in place to make sure that the vaccines have been procured. And of course, the issues to do with movement of people, goods, and services really depended much more on how safe the trader is going to be in this particular time of the pandemic. And in most cases, we're even talking about the accessibility of these particular vaccines. If at all, the priority is actually going to be given to the frontliners, who are the health workers, but also the more vulnerable people that are always, moving from one point to the other. It is a relief to receive the vaccines, but also we have to look at it from the point that the vaccines is actually one way of actually preventing ourselves from the further spread, of the virus itself. Meaning that the other measures must not actually be stopped in terms of, following the guidelines. For cross-border traders, yes, we also expect that this particular development should also occur in other countries, because cross-border trade means that we need to start trading to go to other countries as well. So we still have countries like Zimbabwe that are also rolling out similar measures in terms of having a vaccine. And we've seen countries like Zimbabwe not opening up yet to the movement of small-scale traders. Botswana has not yet opened, and Namibia also hasn't opened. So we are still closed. And we are hoping that probably within the SADC region, if most countries are going to start rolling these particular vaccines, it is actually going to provide a relief in terms of opening up of businesses, and people can start moving. We are only hoping that the criteria the government is going to put in place in terms of who access this particular, vaccine, should cover the sectors that are more, impacted, with the COVID-19. Already we are talking about the frontliners. We are also talking about the people that are moving goods and services, truck drivers, bus drivers, those that are going, across the borders, and the cross-border traders themselves. But we
Mr.
also
Makambwe,
want to see how.
Mr.
Yes.
Makamba, we will get to, I think, who or maybe the criteria. But you've mentioned something very interesting. Despite countries having secured COVID-19 vaccines, earlier than Zambia. I know that Malawi, which is very near here, Zimbabwe, as you mentioned, they've all secured the COVID-19 vaccine, but they're still reluctant to open. Going forward, what does this mean for the cross-border traders in terms of trade? Should they begin to maybe diversify or go to plan B, or hopefully wait until such a time when these countries will decide to maybe open up or ease a little bit, of course, with certain measures that have to be followed strictly?
Yeah, talking about the countries that are not opening up despite having rolled out, we've got a very good example of South Africa, because South Africa, when it started rolling out, the vaccine, it actually announced that all the land borders have actually been opened. But we've actually seen the countries like Botswana and Zimbabwe not following suit despite getting this particular vaccine. But I think most of the challenges that are there in terms of trying to ascertain whether the movement of passenger vehicles or cross-border traders can be guaranteed. It also depends.
All right. As we, try to wait for Mr. Makambo to reconnect, Dr. Koesha, I know that the priority or top on the agenda for Zambia at the moment, from the Ministry of Finance to the Ministry of Commerce and other relevant statutory bodies, the goal is to ensure that Zambia reaches or achieves economic recovery driven by the private sector. How crucial is rollout of the vaccine to achieving this goal?
Thank you so much. I think it's important in that we'll also begin to observe this, that once we start getting vaccinated through guidelines, additional guidelines from the Ministry of Health, we'll be able to learn on how to further manage our lives going forward, and that in itself will give us the necessary comforts on how to manage ourselves within our business circles, the volumes of if you're running a retail value chain, the volume of customers you can manage, and how you can manage them within the space that you have, or whether it's in a corporate office. So it will begin to give us some increased interaction. Face-to-face interaction for business is and will always be paramount and critical in achieving certain business transactions. So the coming in of the vaccine, and we believe other vaccines will also come in over and above the one that has been received today, is that as a private sector, as a business community, let's get involved, let's cooperate, let's work effectively with government, let's be involved where opportunities of procurement come in, and together we'll be able to build that high level of safety net, not only for our business units, but for our individual and collective health as citizens.
I love the fact that, you mentioned opportunities, and of course procurement is just but one of them. And entrepreneurs therefore need to really put their ears and eyes on the ground to make sure that they seize whatever opportunities that this vaccine will bring in the country. But of course, transparency remains the major core, in ensuring that effective administration is achieved. Mr. Makambwe, you are back. Who should be prioritized?
That's a different.
Is that Mr. Makambwe?
Yes, Mr. Makambwe.
Yes,
please.
That's a very difficult question to answer because when you talk about the who should be prioritized in this particular vaccine that has come, I mentioned,
of course, from a perspective of cross-border traders.
Yeah. Okay. So I think when you talk about priority, people that are more vulnerable, especially those that are moving, cross-border traders are among the people that are always on the buses, and they always want to go and get merchandise from one country to the other. It could be that they could be prioritized because they keep on moving. And these are the people that, in most cases, they actually go to other countries. Probably the guard on the other countries are quite low. For example, the trade between Zambia and Tanzania has been ongoing, and you know what has been happening in that particular country. As we're actually mentioning to say that other countries have not opened up, I think this is what they actually fear, that if they open up the borders, it will be extremely difficult to control the movement of people and to even ascertain. That's why we're saying the criteria is the government going to be given certificate of vaccination, to people that are probably those that are on high risk. For example, here we're talking about the health workers. We're also talking about the aged and those that have got conditions that are likely to get this particular virus. So we are talking about the priority being, those. But also we have seen the level of confidence that people have now in the Ministry of Health. Because from the time that we started talking about the procurement and all these particular processes, we've seen a lot of consultation, we've seen a lot of emphasis that the government is actually going to make sure that the procurement and even the standard of a vaccine is actually going to be strictly looked at, so that it does not have any compromise in terms of the standard. So the priority, it will be difficult, but I think the most people that are vulnerable, the cross-border traders, yes, they move a lot, but also the frontliners and those that are actually moving, goods and services across the border.
Dr. Chaboka, one of the things that obviously the vaccine, ultimately, achieves is the fact that, there will be slowly of opening up of businesses with strict adherence, promoting interaction, as you alluded to in your earlier submission, as also we have seen as a trend in other countries such as the United States of America, restaurants and all these other places that initially could not open, even in places where certain laws, were put in place to ensure that there is complete closure. That is changing as well. Now, one of the things that COVID-19 did, Doc, is that it made a lot of businesses realize the importance of digital uptake, or embracing utilization of digital services and innovations to be able to stay afloat and keep doing business. So as we are rolling out the vaccine, which will promote or restore human interaction, what is your call to Zambian businesses in terms of them beginning to say maybe put a hold on the decision to go digital or embracing digital innovations?
Thank you so much. That's an interesting question. Digitalization and the evolution towards the fifth generation technology is unavoidable. It has been happening over time, with or without pandemics. We've evolved from 1G, 2G. You will recall when we had a landline, and that was the primary mode of distant communication. And then we evolved, and the evolution of GPRS, the evolution of 3G, 3.5G, 4G, and now we are talking about 6G, sixth generation. And soon we'll be talking about seventh generation, where we'll be seeing electronic devices practically replacing human capital in terms of undertaking work and major initiatives, major projects. We've already seen that techno evolution in agriculture, where initially there was an influx of a lot of human capital to till land, but that now there is high mechanization in the agriculture sector. So that is unavoidable. What needs to happen now is that the human capital and the digitalization of business and services must complement each other. And out of that, new investment opportunities will come, new platforms of marketing will come. You may have seen in terms of food delivery from restaurants, the restaurants are thriving now if they're handling their digital marketing very well. There are businesses that have been created that just focused on delivery. So you specialize on what you're good at. And there are those who are specializing on cooking in restaurants. And you may go to a restaurant right now and you find that there are probably a handful of people, 5, 6, 7, that you can count with your fingers. But they've been delivering orders since morning and the kitchen is very, very busy. Yes, the element of losing on tips for the service staff on site, yes, may come in, but you find that for that particular business, that particular restaurant, the digital platforms have revolutionized their businesses. So, and that's just one example. The retail value chain now, we may see in future even areas like ShopRite, pick and pay, and the bulk of trade may go digital, where it will be delivery. So we have to accept evolution and live with it. That's why, as a private sector, we've called for government that we've moved from terrestrial technology. We've now got a heavy utilization of mobile devices. We need to invest into in our own satellite as a country, because the demand for bandwidth will keep on growing. Fiber, yes, is highly complementary, but it has own coverage restrictions. But with satellite technology, and if we have our own satellite, and depending on the size and the capacity of the satellites that Zambia may be able to launch into space, that may cover the whole country. And we're going to see an evolution and an increase into pay television as a result. And that in itself will be an array of 20, 30,000 new jobs on the ground in the market, because we may not have to rely on these small dishes on our households, but satellite technology and its evolution will bring a full and different transformation. So everything that is happening right now must be looked at. Yes, the pandemic has come. It is scary. We've lost a lot of brothers and sisters. May their souls rest in peace. But as that is happening and we are fighting back the pandemic, we're trying to get society and business back into the fore. We need to accept the opportunities that technology and the evolution of technology will be able to offer us. And one major thing that technology and digitalization can actually help with is e-health or e-medicine, where the bulk of areas in Zambia where we don't even have big medical health centers or medical facilities, medical personnel, may be catered for digitally. So it will be one way that the evolution of digitalization and the fear of diseases, pandemics can be tackled.
Obviously, it has been said that the fourth revolution or industrial revolution is digitalization. So to be able to maximize benefits, one just has to be an early adapter. Mr. Makambwe, coming to you, you have been an ardent and active proponent of digitalization and making sure that even cross-border traders are not left on this bandwagon. Practically speaking, what is it that the association is doing to be able to achieve this milestone that you've been actively propagating?
Yeah, in terms of trying to find alternatives for cross-border trade, as an association, we've been trying to work around, bring awareness to our members on the options that are there currently in terms of the digital platforms that they can utilize. For example, that we actually conducted a training on digital financing, which we actually brought, different experts to come and talk to our members on how they can actually have options. Of course, currently there are so many risks in terms of using digital platforms. For example, there are so many people that are not very, very, confident in the platforms, probably the websites, and how they actually import certain goods and services from other countries. And this is now coming off for so many people because they've actually tested a few in terms of importing from other private sector outside the country. Probably maybe one of the challenges is that sometimes they would see products online and products can actually be sent either using any digital platform. But you find that when these particular products are delivered, sometimes they actually come with defects. Sometimes it is not the actual product they actually ordered. Sometimes these are some of the things that brings a lot of doubts for so many people to use it. But what we are saying is that the government also plays a pivotal role in providing, digital gateways. For example, in terms of how government can have, for example, just like the web portal that the government is implementing, to provide tangible or credible, intelligent information on goods and services and where they can actually be gotten. And I think this can also provide, information to associations that we can also deliver to our members. And the other thing is also the digital payment platforms that are there. For example, people do not feel comfortable just to send money to a person they don't even know, but they need some goods and services. So the cross-border payment systems can actually be improved further. And I think Zambia thrives, in being a country that has implemented the cross-border payment systems, at the border, currently. But again, this should also cover for the other payments, because we're also seeing that the services now are all getting, on the e-platforms. For example, if you want to get some maybe information on the export permits and any other, you are able to get this particular, information. And already we are seeing that the Zambia Research Institute as well, they're working on the digital information platform in order for people to get access to export license. For example, export permits like for the phytosanitary, exports for agriculture products. And I think all these are strides that government, working with different departments, are trying to provide for cross-border traders to take advantage of. All what we need to do is also to try and educate more and how they can actually use this particular platform. For example, I think Doctor talked about the pressure on bandwidth and the pressure on how much these particular bundles is going to be costing. Probably now these are the things that government has to start looking at, the expansion of technological infrastructure to accommodate, the implementation of the digital business platforms. So even when we are talking about now that we have the vaccines in the country, we'll also need to see how this is actually going to be rolled out to make sure that even when the countries are opening up, there must be that information that can actually come on the digital platform to even advise further. Even when you would have given a vaccination, it does not guarantee that you are actually going to lower your guard. You're going to continue to wear the mask. And this is what we've been preaching as an organization.
Doc, riding on Mr. Makambo's submission, obviously embracing the digital evolution that you did refer to is very, very important if at all entrepreneurs in this country will have a future, and if at all the economy of this country will have a stake in the overall global economy. Now, what pressure is the price of these data or the bundles that are supposed to be used, by entrepreneurs to conduct their businesses at a larger scale, even beyond the borders of this country? How is the cost of these bundles and, of course, data impacting entrepreneurs and the cost of doing business?
I think one thing that we've achieved in Zambia, and I'm happy with your question, and it gives me the opportunity to congratulate the telecoms regulator, ZECTA, and the parent ministry, the Ministry of Communications and Transport, is that they've managed to significantly liberalize the ICT sector in Zambia. And what we've seen is that there is competition at all levels. There's competition on fiber players in Zambia, those that are involved in fiber. There's competition on ISPs. There's competition on the mobile networks. I think now we we will end up with about 4. So that kind of liberalization and promotion of competition does in itself significantly improve the cost of services vis-a-vis reduction, because the companies are competing effectively. So they're looking at ways and means of getting the volume. And as a result of getting that volume, they're competing on pricing as well. So the mechanisms and the models that ZICTA has been using have significantly advanced competition to promote the lowering of prices for goods and services. What we would like to call for, and what have we been calling for, is the tax regime that relates to the ICT sector. I would like to take advantage of this platform to call upon all the sector players in the ICT sector to significantly and regularly interact with ZICTA and with the parent ministry so that they can present common proposals for price reductions through to the Zambia Revenue Authority, as well as to the Ministry of Finance. Collectively, they'll be stronger and they'll be able to deliver and interact with ZRIA, Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of National Planning, and other parties, not forgetting the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry, to ensure that the high tax elements related to ICT products and services are reduced.
Mr. Makambwe, finally, I think about yesterday we saw news all over, the internet. Okay, before I get to you, Mr. Makambwe, we have a caller from Kitwe. Good evening, you're through to Biswick.
Hello, good evening, sir.
You're through to Biswick. What is your question or comment briefly?
Okay, I just wanted to ask something about the vaccine.
Okay.
Yeah, the concerns regarding the same vaccine we are talking about blood clots.
Okay.
Is that issue been addressed, or just to get the vaccine with that concern?
All right, Mr. Chiwe, thank you very much for that question. And on this particular platform, we are not discussing the efficacy or the side effects thereof of the AstraZeneca vaccine that has arrived in the country. Our focus today is the impact that this vaccine will have on the Zambian economy and the Zambian business environment. However, as Diamond Television on other platforms such as Diamond News Desk and other shows and platforms, of course, we will be delving into those nitty-gritties. So please stay glued to Diamond TV. We will be able to provide with you those answers. Mr. Makambwe, we saw a Zambian truck driver succumbing to a gunshot. And obviously that sends some sort of fears, to those that perhaps may want to venture into cross-border trading, as something that they'd like to pursue to be able to earn a living and to be able to advance their business prospects. As an association, what does such unfortunate developments signal to you?
Yeah, it's a very sad situation to have situations like that, and it's not the first time this is happening. And if you remember that maybe this one is even a fourth truck driver that would have been killed, across the borders. What we've been talking about as an association is that this actually need a regional concerted effort, so that these pockets of violence that are just emanating must be dealt with at a higher level. For example, we've been calling for regional bodies like SADA to try and engage countries where this particular violence is taking place. For example, South Africa has been at it in terms of, having all this particular violence. you remember when we had xenophobic attacks, this is one challenge that is actually now bringing down the spirit of regional integration. If we are not going to address the spirit of peace and harmony, we are actually not going to grow in businesses. For example, now we see what is happening in Mozambique is quite unfortunate, and we are actually hoping that what is happening there is not going to affect the trade corridors, because Zambia is actually using Beira as a part of, the port that most of the exports are going. So we would want to call upon member states to try and work on how the region can actually be stable, how these particular problems in terms of trying to protect foreign nationals when they've actually gone there to do business is quite very paramount to make sure that we thrive in our business. It's quite unfortunate that this is actually happening, and we hope that leaders are actually going to adhere to try and see how such type of violence can be avoided.
Okay. Doc, as we get to wrap up this segment, I would like to find out from you, taking into account that the vaccine is clearly not, a direct form of economic stimulus, though it may lead to the achievement of, stimulation of economic activity. What are your thoughts on stimulus packages that we've seen government previously roll out, such as the 10 billion, kwacha, and other efforts that are being made outside such kind of facilities? Briefly.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate the efforts that government has undertaken with regard to stimulus packages, and the season called for it. We needed that high-level intervention, and we encourage our businesses.
Is it making any difference?
To continue interactions with their financial institutions so that they can access their requirements from the allocations that each financial institution has picked up. So it is one of the many facets within the current scenario that is there, and we appreciate the impact that it has and it's having on keeping the businesses afloat.
All right, Dr. Kawesh, Jerome Chavuka, and of course, Mr. Jacob Makambwe, thank you very much for joining me on BizWeek this evening. And of course, looking at how the vaccine will have an impact on the Zambian business environment from a private sector perspective. And where micro entrepreneurship is concerned, we did, of course, look at how this will also affect the cross-border traders. Thank you very much for joining me, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, and good evening.
All right, good night. Now, moving on the show, tomorrow is a very interesting day in the Zambian business environment, and we are still talking business, and we know that Zambia did ratify to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, an agreement that has been specifically made to be able to increase Africa's prospects, trade prospects on the global trading platform, to be able to, build and improve the overall GDP of the African economy, through leveraging numbers. And we know that, Africa is projected to be, in fact, when it comes to productivity, Africa is the future, because Africa's population is projected to grow. And when we talk about population, we're not talking about the old people, but we're talking about the active demographies of the entire population bracket, and we're talking about young people. So Africa is projected to be the future of productivity, the future destination of labor, globally speaking. So the African Continental Free Trade Agreement has timely come to be able to make sure that Africa gains, that place of respect on the international global trade platform. Now, tomorrow, the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will be visiting the COMESA Secretary General here in Lusaka at the headquarters, which is the COMESA Secretariat. And of course, the two will be, deliberating on how this agreement can be cemented and effectively implemented in this country called Zambia. And we know that each and every, the day that Zambia ratified this agreement signaled to the entire African continent that Zambia is ready and open for business. Whether that is, the case, realistically speaking, on the ground is a topic for another day. But the Center for Trade Policy and Development, feels that the agricultural sector is one of such important sectors that government must pay particular attention to make sure that we leverage the opportunities that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will bring through export. But what we've seen recently in this sector is the introduction of administrative bans from the Minister of Agriculture to ensure that food security is actually, kept balanced, and of course at the same time we do not neglect opportunities for exports. So the executive director from CTPD, Isaac Mwaipopo, feels that government must be able to wisely apply these administrative bans, if not doing away with them at all, to make sure that we utilize the market that surrounds Zambia in all the 8 countries that landlock this particular country. And these are some of the thoughts from Mr. Mwaipopo.
The Center for Trade Policy and Development would like to appeal to government through the Ministry of Agriculture to avoid the imposition of export bans on agricultural commodities. CTPD continues to note with concern the inconsistent application of Zambia's trade policy, where we continue to impose bans on the export of agricultural commodities to neighboring countries such as DRC. We would like to raise a concern that this approach of managing the sector has got the potential to hit the agricultural sector. It has the potential to affect production of crops that we can take advantage of and export to neighboring countries. Zambia needs to open up for trade and take advantage of the opportunities that the SADC market provides, especially now that we are part of the Africa Continental Free Trade Initiatives. It is high time that we should emphasize and promote more value addition, and also helping our local producers to take note of the markets they can take advantage of. With regards to the 2021 marketing season, CTPD expects a bumper harvest. This is premised on the fact that in the current agricultural season, a number of parts of our country has experienced positive rainfall, but there was also early distribution of agricultural inputs, and it is our anticipation that the harvest for 2021 will be good, which creates a good opportunity for us to export the surplus to neighboring countries like DRC that continue to look up to Zambia for such.
All right, so those are some of the sentiments from Mr. Isaac Mwaipopo in making sure that Zambia leverages the opportunity that the SAFTA will bring, to the country, especially from an agricultural perspective. Now, within the financial space, obviously, access to capital is a very, very important fundamental when it comes to doing business. As much as the vaccine may come, if people don't have capital, they will still not be able to utilize entrepreneurial opportunities that may present themselves. So Microfinance Zambia Limited launched a very interesting product called Gulani Loans, which is specifically meant to be able to provide an opportunity for Zambians to be able to own assets that are very crucial and play a vital role in terms of accessing finance. And this is what the product is all about.
One of the major stumbling blocks to success for entrepreneurship is lack of access to affordable finance. Microfinance Zambia Limited is changing this narrative by offering products and services that speak to the needs of Zambians. Company Chief Executive Officer Akim Chalwe shares more about the new product.
And this product that we are looking at is called Gulani Loans. So it's really come out of that focus to make sure that we meet our customers' needs and that our products speak to their needs. It's really meant to facilitate our customers who have set to improve their lives, achieve greater goals, to facilitate them buying durable products, durable equipment, durable goods that will essentially better their lives.
The Gulani Loans Facility will enable customers to buy products such as building materials, solar and farm equipment at discounted rates.
We have partnered with quite a number of suppliers and distributors of durable goods in the area of solar equipment, in the area of farming equipment, in the area of even building materials, as well as farming inputs.
Coming up with a brilliant product is one thing, while accessing the product is another. Mr. Chalwe explains who qualifies for the Gulani Loans Facility.
Obviously, the ones that can easily access it at the moment are the ones who are in formal employment and we have signed up MOUs with their employers.
While others limit success to profit margins, Microfinance Zambia's business model aims to meet the needs of existing and prospective clients. For Diamond News, Wenson Mavor.
All right, so there is an opportunity that business-minded people out there that are watching me right now can be able to jump on and see how best it can increase their entrepreneurial prospects. Now, before we get to close the show, we always make it a habit to be able to get feedback from our social media and just get to see what our audience, is thinking concerning the various topics that we look at on this platform. And today's biggest story has to do with the vaccine that has arrived in Zambia and its economic, impact. And some of the sentiments coming from our Facebook platform. And we start with Mr. Robinson Mambwe, who says, I am donating mine to frontline workers. Okay, so the question is, can you, take the vaccine if an opportunity presents itself? And do you feel that it has the potential to turn around or improve Zambia's economic fortunes? Mr. Robinson says, I'm donating mine to frontline workers. How generous of you. Guy Ali Ku says, no, but I can sacrifice the dose to the President Edgar Chagwa Lungu, abbreviated as ECL. Okay, Mr. Abraham Chivuna says, go yourselves, media and ministers. Okay, interesting challenge. Yeah, definitely, we will let you know. Mr. Francis Miambo Chileshe says, yes, very willing. So at least we have a Zambian who is very willing over there. Kawana says, not at all. Mambwe Alamapwe says, Aikona. Interesting sentiments, emanating over there. And one of the things that is very clear is that there is need for ample sensitization for the majority of Zambians to have confidence in this particular vaccine that can help them a lot when it comes to preventing the COVID-19 vaccine. The name is Wenson Mavoro. Thank you for taking time to watch this edition of BizWeek. I will be back next week to give you more updates. Stay tuned.